All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Jesse Hill. I'm the president of Tier 3 IT Solutions, and I'm here today with.
Jason Vance, president of Bubble Up marketing agency.
Today is going to be a bit of an off-the-cuff conversation, as Jason and I were just talking before we hit record. Um, and how it came about was the team at Bubble Up Marketing sent out an email a little while ago, and the subject line said, "Don't let scammers compromise your Google Ads account." And I thought it was really interesting because I'm usually the one educating my clients about phishing scams, and I'm seeing ways that people are trying to hijack email accounts and intercept payments and do all of these things. And I had not thought about the possibility that somebody would be trying to scam my Google Ads account. And so that's kind of the genesis of the conversation here today, and hoping Jason can just shed a little bit light onto what they've seen, because I'm assuming something happened that or has happened a bunch of times that have caused this email to be written. And then we'll talk a little bit about how businesses can protect themselves.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. Yeah, I think that the impetus from that particular email that sent out, I think in 1 or 2 weeks, like we had multiple phone calls from customers saying, "Hey, I got a call from Google, and they said that my Google Ads account had expired, and that I needed to pay $200. The last time I paid was in 2018, and now I needed to pay $200 to reactivate my Google Ads account so that my ads would run." And they don't know what they're like. What? Well, first of all, that was a complete scam because there is no charge. There's no monthly or annual charge for Google Ads. It's only pay as you go based on your advertising budget and things. And Google doesn't call and ask for renewals like that ever. Like they're just going to shut off the account if there's something wrong with it. It's done. So we've got so many of those. We're like, okay, this is obviously a new thing we hadn't heard of before. So we wanted to send out that newsletter informing our clients and letting them know, okay, watch for this and don't fall for it, because it's just one of the many things that we see in our space where people impersonate Meta, like Facebook, they impersonate Google. I'm sure you see this in your business too, like they impersonate domain registries, and sometimes it's hard to tell. Is it a full phishing, total scam, or is it a really really aggressive business practice
yeah.
from a sales perspective, right? Because in this particular case, it was a total scam. But we've also had customers ask us before, like, well, hey, Google called and I need to do my business, Google My Business, right? I need to set that up, and they're going to help me do it, and it's a couple $100 or whatever it is. And we know, okay, that Google actually didn't call you for that, but the person calling you misrepresented themselves as an aggressive sales tactic to get you to give them the money to set that up, right? And it might be a service that they offer. It might be a scam. It's hard to tell, but it's certainly a really underhanded business practice, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think what I got from, reading through the information that you sent over was that, really effective phishing attacks, which is really what this is. I mean, they're doing it, potentially over phone, so we'd call it vishing for voice phishing. But
Yep.
really effective scams and phishing attacks have credibility because they have information about you. And I realized when you sent this out that anybody can figure out if a company is advertising with Google.
Right.
Right? I mean, I could go onto Google and type, you know, marketing services Edmonton, and it'll show me, the first however many listings are companies, and it will say ad beside it.
Right.
Well, now as a scammer or an attacker, I know that company is paying money for the ad, and that if I call them and I make it sound like I am who they think they're advertising with, and I give them, kind of this, oh, the last time you paid was in 2018, kind of story.
Yeah, a little more
All they're
detail.
doing is they're building that credibility so
Yeah,
that, the 200 or $299 fee doesn't sound like that much when they're spending 2,000, 3,000, $20,000 on,
right.
their ads campaign, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's as is most of IT and a lot of these scams, they're preying on the information that you just don't know, right? And so in the marketing space, this is a bit of a black hole, like with Meta, and not everybody understands how Google or ads or Google My Business or Google Analytics, or they get the words mixed up, and is it Meta or Facebook or Instagram? Like there's a lot of confusion from the general business population about like what are all of these things. And so it's easy to, like you said, come in with confidence, say, oh, there's this, you drop a couple of words that they might understand, and it's like, oh shoot, I have to do something, I've got some risk here, right? And they, like with most phishing scams, there's a time, it might be time bound, there's some urgency attached to it, and I've got to take some action to make sure. Thankfully, our clients hopefully have been trained where they just call us, like, what do you mean I have to pay more, right? You don't. Just stand down. It's all okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that urgency, again, that's a hallmark of every phishing attack that we see as well, is when they put that deadline, and they might say something, oh, you last paid this in 2018, and we're so sorry. We hadn't set it to automatically pay and renew. And because we've identified this, you need to pay this by, end of business, August 30th. And
Right.
you're going, well, like, that gives me, 9 business hours to figure this out. Like, how am I possibly going to figure this out? The easiest thing is to just give them your credit card number and make that problem, go away.
Yeah.
Um, but you're going to find you'll have bigger problems because now you have to dispute a whole bunch of charges on your credit card that you weren't expecting.
Yes. Yeah. Um, I don't know if you've seen this other one, but from Meta, I get these almost every week, like multiple times a week, where I get because I'm on a bunch of Meta pages or Facebook pages, and I'll get the warning, you've posted something against our guidelines, your page is going to be shut down, imminently, and if you don't click this link or if you don't do this, like we're just going to take your page off Meta completely. And we get that all the time. I don't know why Meta can't figure out how to stop this stuff, but it is literally every week we get
Wow.
multiple ones of those where, and if you look at it a little bit, you can realize it's not coming from an official source, but it certainly sounds pretty official. Usually there's some sort of a Meta type link in there that maybe it's slightly spelled incorrectly and you don't pick up on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we get those ones all the time for sure.
And so are those coming in through Messenger?
Yep, they come in through
So
through
yeah, so
Facebook
it's
Messenger.
okay.
Yeah.
And those are also, they're saying, hey, you violated our rules,
Yep.
pay money and it'll be okay.
Pay money or just click this link and like
Ah,
fill out this form with all of this information so that we can verify that you're who you are essentially. So
mhm.
in my view, that's like the first step to getting your identity stolen is filling in forms like that, that it's not going to the right place. Meta is not going to ask you for all of that. Or if they do, it's going to be a very lengthy process with them, and it'll be because you're shut down, and you have to go look for that. They don't come to you, like, because we had that happen with a client. They changed something on their business, and their page just went offline, right? They couldn't access it anymore. And it's been like 3-4 months to get them back up and running, back and forth and everything else. It's brutal, but it usually starts with them just shutting it down. They don't communicate with you, oh, we're going to shut you down by this date. It just happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we used to see
These
lots
big
of,
companies aren't known for customer service.
no, we used to see like lots of old school phishing scams where someone would get an email, from the FBI, saying,
Right.
"Oh, we've been running this campaign, this scan, and we've identified that you are, storing and sharing, child,
Uh-huh.
content that you're not supposed to,
Yeah.
and we're lining up a raid, and if you just pay $10,000, in reparations, then that's okay. We'll just forget about you." And kind of to the point of the Facebook thing, like if you've broken their rules, they don't come and tell you. They
Right.
just turn it off, or they, in the case of this fake FBI thing, they come and arrest you, right? And then they sort it out. Um,
Yes.
but I think it's a really good point there about going in and when you click the link, they're asking you for information.
Yep.
And that's again another hallmark of a typical phishing attack is how can they get one step further into controlling your
Right.
digital identity. Um, and what causes problems for most people is they have really poor password hygiene. So if somebody snags your Facebook password,
Right.
what are the chances that works on your email service provider or your banking provider or your payments processor? And so we always recommend passwords are long, complex, unique,
Alphanumerics, like
stored in a
with
password
the,
manager. It's the
yeah, for
I
sure.
say it way too many times each week.
It's true. And yeah, some of this stuff does look official. We've seen they'll send the emails from like googlemarketingsupport.com, right? Or
Mm,
googleadcenter.com. They've registered domains. They've it really looks like, oh wow, that looks legit. And one tip I would say is for Google reps, confirm their email ID. And
mm,
if they like tell them to send an email from their official email, and it would always end with at google.com.
yeah.
And that's pretty much, what you can do with those ones.
Well, yeah, and that was where I wanted to go next was suggestions, and the one that always comes up to me is that it's kind of like when your bank calls you, or someone representing your bank calls you. the
Right.
best
Yeah.
the best practice is to say, "Oh, thanks for calling, I'll call you back."
Right.
And then you pull out your bank card or your credit card and you phone the number on the back of that card,
Yeah.
right? And that's the way that you can verify that you're talking to the person. And we run into it with a lot of these accounts receivable scams where the person will call, they'll say, "Oh, I'll call you back." And then they call the phone number that's in the signature of the fake email that they received. So, well,
Ay,
of
ay,
course you're
ay.
talking to the bad guy
Right.
now.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Like,
Right.
you got to go through a trusted source of information.
For sure. Yeah. Those are a pain. What always gets me on those calls is like when the bank does call, and then and you entertain it, you start talking to them, and they start asking you security questions, and I'm like, well, you called me. You should already know that you've got, like, why do I have to jump through and tell you a bunch of personal security information? You called me. And so that always, I never give that over the phone. And then I'm like, yeah, I hang up. I'm going to call you back. Right. Like,
Yeah.
and usually if it isn't a scam, they're totally fine with that. Yes, of course, sir. No problem. Right. Call back, and hit this to get this to this department, let's say, or whatever.
Yeah.
That's usually fairly straightforward, but yeah, it's interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Well, have you gone through the domains, domain stuff that happens
I'm not
at
sure
all?
what you're talking about.
Okay, so I mean, this has been around for a long time, but those aggressive domain tactics, because again, we're in a space that most people don't understand that much, right? And so it doesn't happen as much now, but I still get the odd one trickling through where one of my customers will receive a letter from it looks like it almost comes from the government of Canada, registries.com, Canada Registries or whatever, and says, hey, your domain's expiring in the next bit, fill in this form with your credit card and we'll make sure it gets renewed. And it looks really official, and it's just a really aggressive business practice. But unfortunately, what has happened, not very often, but the odd time, is that somebody fills in this information and now all of a sudden they've just transferred their domain control to somebody totally different, and they didn't even know they did it. So then like, whether that changes DNS, it who knows? But like, then if the IT company doesn't know, or the marketing or the web company doesn't know, all of a sudden, when you try to go find where that domain is because something's wrong or something needs to get changed, the customer actually can't remember doing this. And the domain is the nucleus that happens in all things digital, right? Like from email and web, and so many things are controlled by the domain. That's the keys to the castle. So you have to protect that with your life, but not a lot of people understand that space. And it's easy to just like flip over to a random registry that you've never even dealt with before.
Yeah. I do remember seeing a lot of those.
Right.
And receiving them myself, and looking at them, and yeah, sometimes you really have to assess like really closely whether it's legitimate or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought what you were going to talk about was, and because you alluded to it a little bit earlier, about lookalike domains.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that's one where we're seeing a lot where, if I wanted to, run a scam, and I wanted to make it look like I was from Google,
Yep.
and of course, I'm not going to be able to register a lookalike domain against Google. But if you received an email from jesse@google.com, or if Google was spelled Googie,
Right.
like how many people would notice the difference between a lowercase I and a lowercase L?
Right.
When you first glance at it, if the body of the email, looks good, the logos are right, the grammar's good, it's pretty easy to overlook that. And that's where we've seen in the past, businesses who have words like liquids in their domain name. Like there's so many opportunities in there to switch letters out into other things. And ultimately, that's what we see really sophisticated attackers doing is, they find a target, they research that target, they invest into, their toolkit, we'll say, so that they can imitate them, and then they start hitting them with these types of scams, and potentially multiple scams from different angles.
Totally. Yep. Yeah, we see that quite a bit in the influencer space. So that's another space that's really growing, is brands will partner with, somebody that has a social media following, and I want them to promote a product or a service, or access to the information, whatever it happens to be. And I pay them a certain amount to go and promote my brand. Well, most popular influencers out there will have a ton of scam accounts that are going and following the people that have followed them. It happens like crazy on social media. And then usually what will happen is like, let's just play with this a little bit. If you really followed, I don't know, pick somebody like Wayne Gretzky. Okay. I don't know. So you follow Wayne Gretzky, or maybe somebody else that is like, you kind of look up to in a specific space, and you follow because they're a personality within that space. And they DM you, and you're like, what? Like, I just followed them, or I followed them 3 weeks ago, right? Like, how come they're, oh yeah, hey Jason, how you doing? Right. And I've got caught on this a few times because if you think about it from a social media handle, how many random characters and weird handles there are out there. A social media influencer can have a really quirky name out there. It's not just Jason Vance. It's like random stuff, right?
Yeah.
It could be quirky Joe 27. And that just happens to be their official handle, but you don't really know that, right? It still says their name, but it's the handle that you have to watch because the name is spelled correctly.
Right.
It's the actual at symbol and whatever's behind that that you have to really watch, to the same level of what you mentioned as your domain name, whether it's a capital I, or is it an O instead of a zero, or there's random stuff like that. You really have to pay attention, because you can have a whole conversation with a scammer and not even know. You're thinking, oh, I'm talking to this individual. They're all interested in me. They've invited me to their private Telegram channel where they're going to give me all this investment advice, right? Like, I am really special here. And then realize, like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to who
Man,
knows who.
if only I had the time to go through it. I don't use WhatsApp all that much. I use it for a
Yep.
couple things, and I hadn't been in it for ages. I popped in there the other day. I've been added into some group
Oh yeah. Yep.
that has 663 unread messages in it for me right now.
Yep.
And yeah, it was all, I popped into it, and I removed myself from one group, and now they've put me in another group,
Yep.
and
Same.
it's
Yep.
all, oh, Bitcoin's going to do this,
Yep.
and you need to buy tomorrow at 11 a.m. and and then all these people come on and say, oh, I followed the advice from last week and made $1,000 off $100 investment, and all this kind of
Yep.
stuff. And this is the first time that's ever happened to me. I've had WhatsApp for years,
Sure.
and I really looked at it, and I realized that a lot of people, if they're not really aware about what these things look like, they all of a sudden start seeing this free investment advice and all these people that are making all this money, and they go, you know what? Well, why don't I give it a shot? Why don't
Right.
I put $100 or $1,000 or
Totally.
whatever you can? And they might even actually make some money, right? Where you put $1,000 in, and oh wow, you made 1,400, and then well, the next time it comes around, maybe you'll put in 2,000 or 5,000,
Yep.
and this is becoming a growing
Absolutely.
industry.
Yep.
They
And then the rug gets pulled.
yeah, yeah, I think they call it pig butchering,
Yeah.
which is a real nice name, but
Right.
that's what they're doing, is they're
Yeah.
they're fattening the pig, the target, by actually letting them feel like they're winning, and
Right.
then they go all in because they've won
Oh,
10 times in a row. They go all in and put 50, 100, $300,000 into it, and then of course, like you said, there
yeah.
it goes.
I would, from just a tip, I would say, on the social media influencers and things like that, if you go to the official person's account, it'll usually have their their social handles there, like a link tree or something that tells you what's going on. And if there are scammers that are like aplenty on their profile, they'll actually say, I don't have a Telegram. I don't
Yeah.
have any private groups. I will never DM you. It's like, I will not do any of these things. Anything that is outside of this framework is a scam, right?
Yeah.
And that has actually saved me once for sure, when I just thought I'd double check, and sure enough, I was chatting with somebody that I didn't need to, and who was asking me for about 10 grand, and I was like, I should probably just check into this a little bit. And sure
Wow.
enough, like, totally not. It looks, and you just don't know. It's so easy to fall for this stuff. Like, sometimes, like, you got to have your radar on all the time, and if you are interested in a topic, sometimes you can get down a road that's like, oh, I didn't really pay attention there for about 5 minutes, and look where I'm at, right?
Yeah.
It's shocking.
Wow. Stay safe online.
Yeah.
It's
Tagline.
tricky. And this is from a couple of guys that spend all day, every day managing technology and marketing and social media and building teams and
Yeah.
educating clients. And I mean, you just heard from Jason that he went, down, he just about was like, at that decision point,
Yeah.
because it can happen to anybody. I mean,
Yeah.
ultimately, the good news is you checked and didn't send them, the money that they wanted. But,
For sure.
that's what it all comes down to for these guys. It is a giant industry.
It is,
phishing and scamming people, and it just grows every year. So
for sure.
awesome. Thanks for taking the time, Jason. Great to have
Absolutely.
the chat.
For sure.
And
We'll do it again sometime.
yeah, you bet, man. All right.